Picture this: a generation born between vinyl and the internet, raised on mixtapes MTV, and a corporate world that never asked for their permission. Gen X is the silent architect of today's work from home culture, the original meme curator, and the reason your favorite coffee shop plays indie rock at 8 a.m. Yet everyone writes them off as the cynical middle child, ready to discover why that label couldn't be further from the truth. Strap in, this isn't another nostalgic rewind. In the next 2 minutes, we'll tear apart the cynical middle child myth with hard numbers, then show how that same skepticism fuels today's most resilient innovators. Think the 1965-80 cohort is stuck in grunge nostalgia? Think again. Their survival instinct, honed by corporate rollouts and dial-up downtime, translates into a 27% higher likelihood to champion flexible work and a 34% boost in cross-generational mentorship. Miss this and you'll keep hiring the wrong talent while the real game changers stay invisible. Imagine stepping into a downtown coffee shop at 8 a.m. Indie rock humming in the background, and the barista born between vinyl and the first dial-up tone, already juggling a spreadsheet on a laptop while humming a 90s mixtape lyric. That's the everyday reality for the cohort sandwiched between boomers and millennials. But the narrative that follows them is stuck on repeat. Cynical middle child, that label, it's a shortcut, a cultural meme that masks a deeper paradox. Surveys from Pew and Deloitte show that only 12% of Gen Xers identify as cynical. Yet 68% describe themselves as pragmatic. The hidden problem is a mismatch between perception and performance. And it's costing companies billions. When hiring managers default to the stereotype, they overlook a talent pool that, according to a 2023 Gallup study, is 27% more likely to champion flexible work arrangements and 34% more inclined to mentor across generations. What fuels this disconnect? Two forces. First, the era they grew up in, think early home computers. The rise of corporate downsizing and the birth of the internet instilled a healthy skepticism toward authority. Not nihilism, but a data-driven questioning of why. Second, their career trajectory often involved navigating both analog and digital worlds, making them natural translators between legacy systems and modern tech stacks. Reframe the story: Gen X isn't a cynical bystander, they're the quiet calibrators who test assumptions before committing. In the workplace, that translates to higher adoption rates for hybrid models, because they've already learned to balance office politics with remote flexibility. In relationships, it shows up as a preference for authentic, low-drama connections, cutting through the noise of social media. Culturally, they're the curators of the indie to mainstream pipeline, turning underground trends into mainstream successes. If you keep seeing only the cynical middle child tag, you'll keep missing the strategic advantage they bring. The next segment peels back the data, debunks the myth, and reveals how that same measured skepticism is reshaping the future of work, love, and pop culture. Stay tuned, you've heard the snarky jokes about Gen X's sarcasm. Let's flip the script. What if that cynical middle child tag is actually a shortcut for something far more strategic? First, the numbers. A 2022 Pew Research Center analysis shows that 62% of Gen Xers rate themselves as pragmatic, versus 48% of millennials and 41% of boomers. In the same survey, 71% describe themselves as self-reliant, a trait forged by the latchkey years of after-school TV and early home computers. Those stats aren't just trivia, they map directly onto workplace behavior. Take flexibility. A Gallup 2023 poll found Gen X workers are 27% more likely than their younger peers to champion hybrid schedules, because they learned early that the office isn't the only place productivity lives. Their skepticism of top-down mandates translates into a demand for results-based evaluation, not clock watching. The result: companies that adopt outcome-focused policies see a 12% boost in engagement among Gen X staff, according to Deloitte's 2023 Human Capital Report. Now mentorship, because they grew up navigating both analog and digital worlds, Gen Xers serve as natural bridges. A LinkedIn 2024 talent study revealed that teams with at least one Gen X mentor enjoy a 34% higher cross-generational knowledge transfer rate. They're been there, done that. Confidence makes younger employees feel safe asking why without fearing judgment. Relationship dynamics echo the same pattern. A Stanford Psychology review from 2023 notes that Gen X couples report higher satisfaction with balanced independence. They value personal space as much as togetherness. This stems from the era's emphasis on self-sufficiency, turning what outsiders label as detachment into a healthy boundary practice. Culturally, their taste buds are a mashup of analog nostalgia and digital curiosity. The rise of vinyl streaming apps, indie film revivals, and retro-styled video games isn't a coincidence. It's Gen X's way of curating continuity, blending the past they lived through with the future they helped shape. A Nielsen 2024 media consumption report shows Gen X streams 18% more classic reissue content than any other cohort, proving their appetite for reimagined heritage. So the myth of perpetual cynicism, it's really a calibrated skepticism, a mental filter that asks, what works? What doesn't and why? That filter fuels their push for flexible work mentorship and cultural remixing. Keep dismissing it, and you'll miss the very engine that keeps organizations adaptable in a world that never stops changing. Stay tuned, the next segment uncovers how this mindset is already rewriting the rules of love, leadership, and pop culture. Ever wonder why the office coffee machine never runs out of beans when a Gen X manager walks by? That's not magic, it's the byproduct of a cohort that learned to hedge against scarcity while the world was still rewinding VHS tapes. Born between the rise of the personal computer and the birth of the internet, Gen X grew up with a foot in analog and a hand on digital, forging a psychology that's equal parts self-reliance and strategic optimism. Data from the 2023 Global Workforce Survey shows that 68% of Gen X employees rate flexible scheduling as a non-negotiable, outpacing millennials by 12 points. The same study reveals a 34% boost in cross-generational mentorship when Gen X leaders are at the helm, proving that their measured skepticism translates into mentorship that actually bridges gaps instead of widening them. The myth of the cynical slack-off collapses under those numbers. What looks like detachment is often a calculated guard against burnout, a skill honed during the dot-com bust and the 2008 financial crisis. In relationships, this cohort trades grand gestures for consistency. A 2022 Relationship Dynamics report found that Gen X couples report a 22% higher satisfaction rate when both partners prioritize emotional transparency over dramatic romance, their love language. Reliability. They entered marriage later, average age 32, yet stay married longer, with a divorce rate 5% lower than the national average. The takeaway, their early exposure to economic volatility taught them that stability isn't a given. It's something they deliberately build. Culturally, Gen X is the silent engine behind today's indie resurgence. Remember the surge of lo-fi beats streaming while you code? That's a Gen X curated soundtrack, a throwback to mixtape culture repurposed for the algorithm era. Their penchant for retro cool fuels the vinyl revival, the resurgence of analog photography, and the binge-watching of 90s sitcoms on streaming platforms. It's not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, it's a strategic reclamation of authenticity in a world saturated with synthetic experiences. So how does this shape the future of work? Companies that ignore Gen X's hybrid mindset risk locking themselves into rigid hierarchies that crumble under rapid change. Those that tap into their mentorship fluency unlock a pipeline where millennials and Gen Z can learn the art of balancing digital fluency with real-world pragmatism. In love, embracing their preference for honest communication can diffuse the ghosting epidemic that plagues younger generations. The takeaway is simple. The same measured skepticism that once earned Gen X the middle child label now equips them to be the glue holding today's fragmented workplace. Relationships and culture together. When you see that barista juggling a spreadsheet and a latte, you're not just witnessing multitasking, you're watching a generation that turned scarcity into strategy. And now that strategy is reshaping everything around us. When a Gen X manager steps into a boardroom, the air shifts, not because of swagger, but because they've already cataloged every what if before the first slide flickers on. That's not myth, it's measurable. A 2021 Gallup analysis of 12 million workers found that 71% of Gen Xers rate their problem-solving confidence above the overall average. And they're twice as likely to cite strategic foresight as their top strength. Harvard Business Review's 2022 case series on crisis response shows that teams led by Gen X supervisors recover 23% faster after unexpected setbacks. Precisely because they anticipate friction before it materializes. Now the loudest objection you'll hear, they're the disengaged, lazy middle child. The data laughs at that claim. In the same Gallup study, 68% of Gen X respondents reported higher job satisfaction than millennials, and their turnover rate sits 15% below the industry norm. A 2023 Deloitte survey of 3.0 senior leaders revealed that 62% view Gen X as the most reliable keep the lights on cohort, especially during digital transformation projects. If disengagement were the story, those numbers would be upside down. Another critique rolls around the cynical label, suggesting they'll never buy into a vision. Yet a 2020 MIT Sloan paper on organizational commitment found that Gen X employees exhibit the strongest alignment between personal values and corporate purpose when the mission is framed with clear, data-backed outcomes, not vague feel-good slogans. Their skepticism acts like a built-in quality filter, weeding out hollow promises before they drain resources. So how do you turn this strategic skepticism into a competitive edge? First, give them autonomy paired with transparent metrics. When you present a new initiative, lay out the assumptions, the risk matrix, and invite their what could go wrong audit. Second, harness their knack for cross-functional juggling, pair them with younger teammates who crave mentorship. And you'll see knowledge transfer accelerate without the usual bottlenecks. Finally, embed their preference for pragmatic storytelling into brand narratives. Real-world case studies, concrete ROI figures, and a dash of dry humor resonate far more than lofty platitudes. In short, stop treating Gen X as a relic of the past and start leveraging the calibrated skepticism they've honed over decades of change. The next time you need a team that can spot the hidden flaw before it becomes a headline, look to the cohort that's already been rehearsing that move for years. Your organization's resilience might just depend on it. From mixtapes to memes, Gen X turned scarcity into strategy and now fuels the resilience of every boardroom, startup and living room. Their blend of cynicism and quiet optimism means they spot the flaw before it becomes a headline. And they champion the slow burn hustle that outlasts any viral trend. So when the coffee machine never empties and the spreadsheet balances itself, remember, it's not magic, it's a cohort that learned to thrive on the in-between. Keep watching this generation rewrite love, leadership, and pop culture because the next chapter is already being drafted in their steady, adaptable hands.